What happens when a quiet black boy says his mom works at NASA and the whole class bursts out laughing? They never expected the woman who walked through that door would leave the room in absolute silence. It started like just another school day, but one boy's words, simple, honest, and full of pride, lit the match, and behind the laughter that followed, something much uglier was hiding. And so, let me tell you about Marcus Johnson, 12 years old, brown skin, big heart, that quiet type who doesn't need a spotlight to shine, always the one who brought an extra pencil for the kid who forgot theirs, or who stayed back to help clean up the lab table after science class. Not because anyone asked, but because he was raised right. Polite to his teachers, kind to his classmates, and when he talked about the stars, man, his eyes lit up like a whole damn galaxy. Marcus had a dream too, a real one, not I want to be famous or get rich quick. No, this boy wanted to work at NASA, just like his mama. She wasn't just his hero, she was the reason he believed black kids could be geniuses too. So picture this, it's a Wednesday, cold cafeteria pizza kind of Wednesday. Miss Grayson, their 6th grade teacher, announced a fun assignment. Tell the class what your parents do for a living. Let's learn from each other's families. So the kids go one by one. My dad's in tech. My mom's a surgeon. My uncle's a firefighter. All polite nods, all smooth sailing. Then it's Marcus's turn. He straightens up, tugs at that too big shirt collar like it's a spacesuit, clears his throat. His voice is soft, but there's pride under it, like steel wrapped in velvet. My mom works at NASA, he says. She's a navigation systems engineer. She helped develop... He didn't even get to finish. The room erupted, not in applause, in laughter. Justin, yeah, that Justin, the one with the perfect hair and the smug face kids learn from watching their daddy talk down to waiters, starts cackling first. Then others join in. One boy fake launches an invisible rocket from his desk. Another falls out of his chair in an Oscar-worthy display of mockery. NASA, please. What'd she do, ride a scooter to Mars? Bet she cleans the satellites with Windex. Now here's the kicker. Miss Grayson, grown woman, supposed adult, just stood there. Didn't clap, didn't frown, didn't say a word. She looked at Marcus like he just said his mama sells dreams door to door. Then, in the driest tone you've ever heard, said, "Okay, thank you, Marcus. Next." And that was it. Now, if you've never seen a 12-year-old shrink into his own skin, let me paint it for you. Marcus sat down slow, didn't say a word, eyes fixed on the desk like it held the last of his dignity, his hands curled up in his lap, and his face, Lord, his face was that mix of hurt and confusion that only comes when someone breaks your pride in front of everybody. And the worst part, nobody stood up for him. Not a single voice said, "Hey, that wasn't right." Not one teacher, not one kid. Later that day in the cafeteria, Marcus sat alone, one half-eaten sandwich, a juice box nobody traded for. Justin slid into the seat across from him like he owned the table. "Look, I know you're lying," he whispered, like he was sharing a secret. "NASA don't hire people like your mom." Marcus didn't answer. But inside, something cracked, not from the words, but from how easy they came, like it was obvious, like truth had a skin color. And let's be real, it wasn't just about him. It was about what people expect when they look at a boy like Marcus. The second he said NASA, the room decided he was either lying or joking. Because in their world, a black woman working on satellites, that's comedy, a punchline. But what they didn't know, what they weren't ready for, was what was coming next. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. Stay right here, because the pressure's only building. What should have been just another school day turned into a firestorm. Because truth has a way of making folks real uncomfortable, especially when they've built their pride on pretending it doesn't exist. The next morning, Marcus showed up to school. Yeah, he came back. Not because it was easy, not because he wasn't hurt, but because that's what he'd seen his mama do his whole life. Show up, even when the world was giving her reasons not to. He stood at the front doors a second longer than usual. His backpack felt heavier than normal, like it was carrying more than books. He knew the giggles were coming, the stares, the whispers, and right on cue, as soon as he stepped into the classroom, it hit him like a wall. On the whiteboard, in thick red marker, someone had scribbled, NASA equals sign, not a smart African, big, bold, proudly ignorant. And let's be honest, nobody was fooling anybody with the fake initials scribbled in the corner. Everyone in that room knew exactly whose smug hand wrote it. And no, I'm not going to pretend like Miss Grayson didn't see it. The woman walked right past it, coffee in hand, like she was blind on purpose. She didn't flinch, didn't erase it, didn't say a word. Now, silence? Silence is a language. And that day, her silence was loud. Marcus sat down, jaw clenched so tight it looked like he was holding back a hurricane. His notebook stayed closed. He didn't even bother taking out a pen. What was the point, right? They'd already written his story for him in marker. But then came the afternoon. Miss Grayson announced it was time to collect the parent project write-ups. A few kids proudly turned in neat little essays with clip art and glitter borders. When she turned to Marcus, expecting him to pass his forward, he did something nobody saw coming. He raised his hand. "Excuse me, Miss Grayson," he said, calm but steady like a drumbeat. "My mom, she said she'd like to come in, to tell the class about her job herself." Now, you'd think a teacher, any teacher, would be thrilled. Parental involvement? That's gold, right? But Miss Grayson shifted in her chair like someone had asked her to swallow a tack. "Well, if that's what she wants," she said, blinking too fast, "just let's keep things simple. No performances, okay?" Performances? Like this was some kind of school play. Like Marcus had made up a character with a space badge just to impress a room full of kids who laughed at algebra. But Marcus didn't argue. He just nodded. And then we waited. The next day, 10:30 sharp, the classroom was buzzing. Not with excitement, with that nasty little kind of energy people get when they're hoping someone falls on their face. Some were whispering jokes. Some just sat back, arms crossed, waiting for the show. Then the door opened, and in walked a storm in heels. Dr. Loretta Johnson, 6 feet tall in confidence, dressed in a deep indigo pantsuit, sharp enough to slice through steel. Smooth locks, pulled back. A single NASA pin glinting on her blazer like it had something to say. She didn't glance at the board, didn't flinch at the eyes watching her. She walked straight to the front of the room, heels tapping like punctuation marks on tile. "Good morning," she said, her voice smooth and cutting. "I'm Dr. Loretta Johnson. I'm a navigation and autonomous systems engineer at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Yes, I'm Marcus's mother, and yes, everything he told you was true." And just like that, dead silence. Not one whisper, not one snicker. You could hear hearts skipping. Then she pulled up a presentation, not some clip art slideshow. No, this was real. High-res photos of satellites, mission boards, diagrams of Mars rover routes, videos of her team launching control systems into the sky. And then, one final picture. Her, in the control room, headset on hand on the console, face lit by mission monitors. Not even Justin could look directly at the screen. He stared at his shoes like they were suddenly fascinating, and yet, somehow, the boy had the nerve. "Is that real?" he asked. "Or just for, like, school?" Dr. Johnson turned to him like he was a riddle she'd already solved. "It's very real," she said. "In fact, I've extended an invitation to your school. If Miss Grayson agrees, you're all welcome to visit Goddard. You can see the labs yourself. Maybe it'll help some of you reconsider who gets to dream big and who already is." "Miss Grayson?" She said nothing, just nodded, eyes wide like she'd never seen a black woman take up space like that, literally or figuratively. This is the moment. Everything you've waited for? It's coming up next. Stay locked in. Because in the next chapter, Marcus does more than hold his head high. He flips the whole script. This was the moment. The second truth spoke louder than every lie that came before it, and the ones who laughed, suddenly they had nothing left to say. A week later, the school bus rolled up to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. The kids stepped off in clumps, some curious, some just happy to skip math class. But Marcus? This day meant something more. This was his proof. Dr. Loretta Johnson was already there. She wasn't dressed like someone trying to impress. She didn't have to. That navy blue blazer, that NASA badge, and the way everyone on campus greeted her, it said everything. First stop, the orientation center. Screens showed mission launches, satellite data, Earth from orbit. Dr. Johnson guided them with calm authority. No bragging, just facts. Power in her presence. Then came the satellite hangar. Massive, cold, quiet like a chapel. Real satellites, real engineers. And every time one of them asked Dr. Johnson a question, you could feel it. Respect, familiarity, trust. And the students? They finally saw what Marcus had said was true all along. Even Justin. He stayed quiet the whole time. No jokes, no sideways glances, just silence. That special kind of silence people carry when they know they've been wrong. After the tour, just before getting back on the bus, he walked up to Marcus. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. You didn't want to, he said. That's the problem. Miss Grayson, lingering behind the group, approached Dr. Johnson, clearly shaken in a way that felt new. I owe your son an apology, she said. I didn't believe him. That wasn't fair. Dr. Johnson nodded, calm and clear. He's used to that. Doesn't mean he should be. The next morning, the whiteboard in their classroom looked different. The cruel joke from before was gone. In its place, a single line, written by Miss Grayson. Every child deserves to be believed, even when the truth challenges us. And Marcus? He walked into class like he belonged, because he did, he always had.